Hello and welcome to another episode. In today's episode, I talked to my friend who has chosen to be anonymous for this episode. So he'll be known as Azureus, and I had so much in well, I had a borderline existential crisis when I was listening to this episode because I realized that it was making me question my own journey in this space of social media, and that's what we talk about. We talk about how social media affects our identity, the lack of counterculture, post 9/11 social media, the value of anonymity, people standing for things they don't understand, moderation, the business of it all, and loads more. So I found a lot of value in this, and I hope you guys do too. So without further ado, here is Azarus.
The flawed idea is that we're actually free in private but not in public. In reality, it's quite the opposite. You are most free when you're a stranger, when nobody knows you and you don't know them. That's when you can really express yourself. Most importantly, that's when you try on like different identities. And it's not wrong, it's not bad, it's become a crime, which is a problem. And that's really the problem. To not know yourself, to disagree with what you thought about yesterday, to be different from who you are. You completely agreed with one particular ideology and now you disagree. You want to be somebody else. You want different friends. You want a different crowd. But more importantly, um, it's kind of causing like a clustering of ideologies where it's really hard for me to have a complex identity where I believe one thing and the people I hang out with who believe that thing may disagree with something else that I believe elsewhere, right? So that is quite hard when you know my face and you know my name. There's actually a very famous book about it that to be honest I haven't read, but I know that this book has been basically like quoted for everybody talking about cyberspace from the 90s onwards. I think it's called True Names, or True Faces, or True Names, or something like that.
Okay.
It's a science fiction book. Um, so that idea, right, that actually the gold mine for anybody who wants to subvert cyberspace is to know who you really are. And that for me is where my breakaway from social media happened, and which is that I grew up. I don't know about you, so maybe um, you may not relate to this, but my parents told me when I was young, and my dad had the foresight to like let me loose on the internet. Maybe partly because I was interested in coding or whatever else, but my dad and my mom, and so the only rule was, and I'm sure this was common for kids my age, don't put your face there, don't tell them where you live, and don't tell them your real name. Okay, just do whatever the hell else you want. Just don't tell them who you are. Okay, that was the internet, right? And I don't know why. Like I remember talking to this German guy when I was traveling, and I think he probably had the best theory that it was probably the post 9/11 world, where suddenly like it became a thing that you cannot be unknown to the state. You cannot be unknown to the establishment. It's dangerous in some way for you to have a space to speak where you are anonymous, right? So for me, the social internet, which is not anonymous, is not actually a social internet, because I don't find people actually being social when there's so much at stake. You can't actually, I think it's really hard to be social when there's so much at stake, when everything you do, everything you say is scrutinized. I know this person who, for instance, and this is kind of an example of how it changes your interactions towards actually being social, actual expression, into platitudes. I know this person who put out a video, a Black Lives Matter support video, and they were criticized for some things that they said. Okay, and this is a pro BLM person.
From a
And
BLM person.
yeah. And they took down the video and then put a black icon instead, right? So
Yeah.
so and that's because it's actually very hard for you to deal with people, like you suck at it. Everybody just has to understand we suck at dealing with actual real people. That's why alcohol is so important to social situations. I honestly believe that. That's like something I read from
It's like
I think it was Tolstoy. But yeah, I actually believe
alcohol is
that.
needed for social
Because we
like
really suck. We really suck at dealing with people. And what has happened is that I think I think that there's a lot to gain from as a democratic platform like the internet, which does not only is democratic, but it also, I'm not against the depagification and the pro paragraphification either. I think that why not everybody can express themselves in a page. That's very limiting to a lot of people. So I love that. Actually, I was one of the first users on, I forgot what it was called. Pounce. It was called Pounce. It was alongside Twitter, there was this other thing called Pounce, which I like better, and Tumblr. So I actually really like that, because even though I'm capable of expressing myself in very long pages, I do find it extremely tiring. So there's nothing specifically wrong with that. The problem is that when you tie people's real identities to it, what you do when you go on a Facebook is you are no longer thinking about, and I feel very strongly about this, you're no longer thinking about the argument, you're thinking about the person, right? You look at somebody's views, you look at what somebody's saying, and it's much easier to attack the person than it is to attack. And okay, I'm using an extreme example of, like, say, a political discussion or whatever, but it doesn't matter. It's anything, whether it's positive or negative.
yeah,
Um, you're not treating the message as a message. You
right.
are, in your mind, and it's not your fault. I'm not blaming you, the poster, for wanting attention. It is the viewer. Most human viewers are incapable of, when you attach a face to something, treating the message as the more interesting thing than the face, right? And so you inevitably end up treating everything as that person's branding exercise, and
Right.
you just naturally just assume that you get into that identity problem, you get into that identity conflict. That's the value of anonymity, which is,
Yeah.
it doesn't pay to attack an anonymous person. What are you going to do? You can't stalk them. You don't know who they are, right? They could, for all you know, be pretending, right? And there's actually a really important part of the early internet um, which kind of burst the bubble of all of this, which is pranks. It's so easy to prank you when you're anonymous. It actually encourages slightly better behavior. Um, if you don't know, like, okay, let me give you like an example. Like, as kids, we used to keep pranking somebody in the class, pretending to be someone else. Okay,
Right. Right.
so now you know that's possible. Now you know that it could be a prank. It could be one of your classmates, right?
Right.
So that's interesting, because it does something interesting to you. It does the same thing to you that um, um, I would say speaking to a faceless audience does, where you'd say one thing if the audience is faceless, and you were traveling to another country and nobody's there, but you'd be slightly different if you knew there's a small chance that the people there knew you, right? So this constant finding balance is important. Anonymity is not the only rule, just like true names are not the only way it should work.
Right.
There is a balance. The balance skews a lot towards anonymity, okay, but now it's really weird because it's gone all the way in the other direction.
So you're saying
So
that, just to understand this correctly, so like broadcast media, like let's say it's from the social aspect of human interactions, we become broadcasters of a particular brand of identity, and in such, people also treat us like through their own biases, like the viewer biases, to attack the brand and
yeah,
in,
yeah, yeah,
and mistake the thing that. Wait, no, I'm losing myself here. This is the part I didn't understand. Like, how is it the viewer's fault? Like,
Well, it's not the viewer's fault. It's a human deficiency that we have to design around, like a lot of other human deficiencies. Um, it's one of the reasons, for instance, you're never going to have flying cars. I don't care how cool the technology is. Flying cars are a bad idea. You will have a lot of death. We're just not fundamentally capable of navigating in a 3D space. We're not built for that. We have two eyes and we can't see below our feet.
right,
So this is like a flying car, which is it's not built for you. It's not built for the deficiencies you have. It amplifies them. It,
right,
it makes you crash, and it does this precisely in this way that when you when you know who that person is, when you see their face, and especially when you know them, when you can find them on the internet, you can find out other things about them. You kind of lose sight of what you should be doing, which is just having that conversation or reading that message. The focus is supposed to be the message, right? The focus is supposed to be this person saying something, but it's not. It's now automatically in your head attached to that person's identity, and now your brain is busy building that person's identity, not really dealing with the argument as it is. So if you and I were complete strangers, we were to talk politics, it would be very different from if you and I knew each other. And actually the former interaction is a superior interaction. I'm far more likely to if we're having a debate and we're opposing sides, find some kind of insight. If I have to change my mind from the former interaction, the latter will quickly become a bunch of personal attacks or this bland agree to disagree, right?
but I'm just curious. Like, do you think? Don't you think this exists on like platforms where, say, like Reddit, that are anonymous?
Yeah, I don't think that there's too much wrong with some of these anonymous platforms. The problem, I think, is not Reddit or Slashdot or any of these other platforms. The problem now is more meta. And I think, for instance, now you'll see Reddit crashing and Slashdot crashing. I don't actually, you know about the whole Reddit controversy.
Which one? There's so many.
Okay, never mind. It's okay. Let's not go there then. I think a lot of the problem is that we have fundamentally changed now. We're past that point, I think, where it is what I was describing to you, which is the viewer. It doesn't take you by surprise anymore that somebody's attacking you on the internet, right? You know now. That's what I mean by high stakes. You know now that what you say is very high stakes, that you won't be allowed to get away with it, right? So you kind of take that same attitude to a platform where you are anonymous and you can kind of do your own thing. That's one thing. The second thing is, with all of these platforms, when it becomes about the platform economics, when it's about ads, then there is a drive to clean it up, right?
Right.
And
Which has happened
I'll,
with
I'll,
Meta's
I'll come
case.
back to that. That's more complicated. But just to stick to this, um, it's not that there are bad platforms. It's more that uh, let me give you a different example, just to move away from Reddit. You know, let's take Instagram for instance, and specifically like influencers on Instagram, and how even if you're not an influencer on Instagram, you are an influencer on Instagram because you think like that. Because especially if you're a woman, you know that most of your viewers are lecherous men. You know it. You know you're being stalked, right? So you have two options. You get off the platform, right? Or you stay on the platform and now you change your behavior to adapt to this knowledge that the window is open and people are looking into your house. Okay? Right? So what you see like on other parts of the internet are more that we just have this mindset now, and it's very dangerous. I think that we've forgotten the value of anonymity. In fact, I think that's the hard part. That was that conversation that I was having with my German friend. We have been convinced by these platforms that anonymity is dangerous. You know, the church of your real name and your real identity and being open and putting yourself out there, we've been convinced that that creates more trust and that creates all of these other things. And you look at Meta's goals and mottos, um, it doesn't. It's quite obvious. There's literally a negative correlation with societal cooperation and how long these platforms continue to exist. So um, but we're just convinced. So we just act like that. It's part of our internal belief system. It's part of our culture. We believe putting ourselves out there is a good thing, which it is. But it's good to do it anonymously, because what you're trying to do is learn who you are. You're not trying to decide who you are and then, like, plant a flag in the ground, find your crew, and take a stand. Like, I know a lot of people are taking a stand that they don't even know, like, they don't know how to defend. They don't know the nuances of it. They just, either they were born into it, or it's the first set of people they met, or 95% of the people around them think that way, or they find that community cool.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the thing.
Right.
That's the issue. Which kind of loops back to something you said. Actually, it was very interesting. It set off a thought in my head, and then I knew that would need a little more time. What did you say? It was something about cleaning up the place, right? What Meta is doing, cleaning up the place.
Yeah. So, yeah, what Meta is doing. Okay, let's segue into that a bit. We were talking about it was Meta, and then it was going into segueing to the moderation that Meta imposes for advertisers' purposes. Yeah, and that's when you had the tangent.
Yeah, yeah. Because it triggered something I probably haven't linked, so I don't know how coherent this is going to sound. I was talking to somebody the other day about the, just the lack of a counterculture.
Right.
I was always counterculture. I mean, from the time I was a kid, I always wanted to rebel, and I knew my peers are like that. I know culture to be like that. I can't think of a world without the counterculture. I was a musician coming out of college. I wanted to be a musician, and for me, like, what is music without counterculture revolutions? Uh, so, what? Um, I was just
So you
thinking, what
think
is a
that
counterculture? But
countercultures are missing in the world in social
yeah,
media?
yeah, I was just as I was saying that, like I said,
And
not
it's
very
also
coherent, but
it's also like even that's an interesting point, because right now there's so much noise. There's so much noise. It's hard to see what's a counterculture and what's just a norm.
yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about as I said it, because I was.
It's like,
So let me put it this way. I don't know how accurate this is. So just think of it as like rambling. And I'm thinking of it from a music point of view. If you can
okay,
define a new kind of movement in music as a subgenre, then it's not a counterculture. Okay?
okay,
So I don't know how true that
it's a
is or
new
how accurate
genre of
that is.
music.
Yeah, but I'm just going to run with that in my head, right? So jazz was not a form of pop or classical music. Metal was not a type of hard rock. Rap was not a type of hip hop, and house music was not a type of anything that was there before that. So all of these things are kind of were countercultures, and you there's the value in a counterculture. I think is that, and I'm kind of thinking back to the concepts that musicians have of selling out and this and that, and the value of a counterculture, I think, is that you maintain your integrity because people don't want to associate with you. So that's a counterbalance. You wouldn't see a politician hanging out with Ozzy Osbourne. And I suppose that's why, well, interesting, I never thought of it that way. I suppose that's why the counterculture is so profane. Like, it's almost like the counterculture is trying to keep you out. If you're endorsed, then you're not the counterculture, you know? And that's missing. Um, it's missing because I think what has really happened is that the platforms have found a way to make everything of value to them, and so
That's a very interesting point.
everything is a part of that culture, and that culture
Yeah,
is reinforced in a very kind of hegemonic way because
yeah.
it's yeah. You know what irritates me,
That
for instance? You know all those faces on YouTube thumbnails?
yes,
The
like
emotional
yours
faces,
soon
like,
enough.
huh? Yeah, yeah,
Like yours
yeah, yeah.
soon enough.
Yeah, exactly. So
uh,
that is because the algorithm picks that up as a extreme emotion, and there is a higher weightage for that. Now, I don't know if that's real or if it's urban legend, but it doesn't matter
but
because
it makes sense though, because um, so what you're basically saying, and that's so interesting, is that they design culture not for for their own benefit rather than anything else. Like, because the whole social
yeah,
media
they have to.
platforms
Like, how can you
are,
blame them? How can you blame them?
yeah,
They have to.
they were originally that, like, and that's a very interesting point. Social media is not social media anymore. It's like, it's business, but we don't think of
Yeah.
it as that.
I mean, you can have a laugh when they say they're trying to make society better, but what they're trying to do, what do you want them to do? You have paid platforms too, and both of these can coexist. Um, they are trying to run the business. I'm not going to pretend that that's all cool because there are, but that's a different conversation altogether. The things they want from running the business, the things their stakeholders want, I think drive them too far down the point of becoming monopolistic. But that's a different matter. That gets into like, I don't really know like how to feel about that. For instance, I don't know if I don't know how I feel about Mastodon versus Twitter versus just not being there at all. So let's not go there.
Uh, Could you
But
unpack that a little bit, though? I'm curious, the business of social media, and a bit more into how it works and why it's structured the way it is for the benefit of social media.
okay, let me clarify. I actually don't. I think it's platform, not just social media. So when I say platform, I mean even something like Netflix, Amazon, all platform economics, not just social media. I think we're way past social media. Like I said, like I don't think people realize that we're way past social media. We're in the recommendation age, and I don't know what's coming next. Netflix, Amazon, it's a recommendation media. So it's not social. Even Amazon, for instance, is a recommendation engine and one of the largest ad companies in the world. Not as much a marketplace, probably in the future, especially in places like India. They're likely to make more money selling ad space than commissions on sales. If I was in Amazon India, I'd think very, very hard about charging a commission on a sale, which, I mean, getting 0% there allows me to grow like crazy. But the ad spends on Amazon, that's where my revenue is. And that's turning Amazon from a marketplace again into, you see this kind of funneling of everything into the same thing. That's a problem, right? Um,
So,
so,
so
sorry,
fundamentally,
that was a tangent. That was a tangent. My bad.
that was a tangent. Yeah.
Platform economics. Um, So this is something you have to kind of restrict me on if I go off on a tangent because it is something I'm actively thinking about from the point of view of for years now about how my own marketing strategies are going to look in this world on these platforms and how I work with them. I will try to keep like specific opinions out, which is specific to my business now and things like that. So let me try to stick to generic stuff. Um, I think a good place to start is understanding. And sorry if I sound old. This is the part where the reason I'm umming so much is because when I talk to people about these things, they just think I'm an old uncle. But no, I actually I'm increasingly convinced that it's not that what I'm saying it has some basis to it. Uh, um, so if you look at what culture is today and you look at what content is today, uh, I think it's kind of a lot like food, which I don't know if there's any correlation or it's just a nice meta thing that so much of our content is about food. But one of the things that one of the things about food that makes it very interesting is that you look at the way that you consume a movie versus the way that you consume food. Um, um, when something is when something is too jarring, okay, you have a reaction and you either stop eating, okay, um, or you just kind of you're just drowning in that reaction one way or the other, okay. But when food is well made, you start to reflect, okay, because you start to think, you start to go into this kind of loop, and that's kind of why you keep eating something that's tasting good. um, when something is a perfect balance of texture, salt, sweet, your brain actually can't react, it has to reflect, which is good,
Right.
which is the good thing about food, because it incites that response out of you even on your most bored and depressed day. It incites that reflection, so as you chew you're kind of thinking like, oh, it's interesting, is this like, could this be more salted, what is that texture, xyz, and you're stuck in the same thought. Though that's the limitation of food, is that you have a bite, you keep having the next bite, but you're really just stuck in the same thought. It's not evolving. You don't necessarily, except maybe in Michelin star restaurants, have evolving tastes as you eat more of something, right? You have the same taste and you keep chewing, and the addiction in food is that it's very convenient, it's very nice to just be lost in that reflection and keep chewing until the point where it's physically uncomfortable, right? Now that exact dynamic, which I think too many people get it wrong when they talk about dopamine and all. It's, yeah, sure, I mean, again, you're past that, you're past the likes, you're past the dopamine that's there. I think the thing you're not realizing is that all content is now like chew and chew and chew, and if the hit doesn't come in the first bite, you have to engineer it in such a way that the hit comes in the first bite, which is, the clickbait bite, and then it just stays, and you got to sustain that as the eater continues to chew, right? And you got to sustain the chew for as long as possible. And that works brilliantly for YouTube and engagement based platforms. um, that works very well for them. And that's not just, for instance, social media, it's also Netflix. It's why you binge watch. Let me give you a small tangent. Do you know why Harry Potter was so good? And I think J.K. Rowling realized that, and that's why the books started to grow in volume.
No.
Actually, I don't know if you remember the time when the conversation about books was about how it was unput downable, how you could finish it in 3 hours, right?
Yeah.
And that's when I think the chewing of books started, because I don't like books that you can just is unput downable and you can finish in 3 hours. In fact, the best experience you can have with a book is, for instance, what J.K. Rowling created with Harry Potter for a lot of children. By growing the size of the volume, you can't finish it so fast. You go to sleep, and then your dreams start getting into dragons and wands, and then you wake up half in that world, and then you continue reading, and then you sleep again, and you keep moving between those two things. And that kind of, for me, again, I might sound like a crusty old fellow, but that's good culture.
It does make you
Right,
reflect
right.
and.
So I think my need for the chewing kind of reflection stops at food. I don't need another medium to become that. I don't need movies and books to become that. I need movies
Well,
and books to do the things they do well. So
well, well, you need to be able to do that in other mediums in order for you to like grow, right? Let's say you can't
no,
just.
okay. So let me give you an example. Have you seen Sixth Sense?
Yes.
Okay, you don't have anything to chew till the end, right? You can create a movie like that, except you know what they do when they create a movie like that today? The spoiler, the trailer, or the description of the movie would get you guessing that they would not present it in that way. For somebody who does not know what Sixth Sense is and is not going to read the plot, assume you can't read the plot of the movie. In today's world, the engagement on Sixth Sense would be disastrous. People would stop watching that movie in 15 or 20 minutes because you haven't given them anything to chew, right? So in today's world, the kind of pressure to have that first bite be juicy makes it very hard to create content that is otherwise in general juicy, because I mean, it's a gold mine. If you really have something that is juicy in the first bite and then juices up more and more for 2 hours or 3 hours and then ends even better than how you started, you have created one of a handful of iconic
Masterpieces.
cultural moments in world history. But you don't have that. It's not there usually.
So,
Um,
like, just to bring it back, so the fa- social media prevents a reflective mechanism that uh, uh, is needed, um, or is like, that's the thing I'm not understanding because.
Yeah, no. Again, it's not social. It's the UI. It's not social media. It's about what we build with the tools we have. Now, it's too meta to kind of unpack it reductively all the way. But broadly, the problem is that the recommendation is driven, the algorithm and the recommendation rewards higher viewing rates, something that you're willing to watch for an hour, something that you're willing to listen to for hours. I cannot listen to my favorite album in the world twice in a row, but I can listen to lo-fi music for 6 hours. Okay, so you see how the recommendation and the economic platform, not just for Spotify or YouTube Music, but also for the artist, has changed the incentive for what that art should be like. That's what I'm talking about. And so, because of that, if you're gonna lose it, if you're gonna lose a user, you're gonna lose a viewer, you're gonna lose a consumer um, in minutes if you don't give them something to chew on immediately, if you don't give them, like, you know an aubergine pizza where the aubergine is actually a mushroom and it confuses them. It tastes like a mushroom, it feels like an aubergine, what is it? you know that kind of thing.
That, that's
so
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 interesting.
so so that you don't. And so now all mainstream media, the whole culture, no counterculture, is like that. So maybe that's a better way to define counterculture than what we were doing before. And counterculture is anything that does not try to conform to that. And a thriving counterculture does not exist because there is no incentive to do that, to not conform to that platform economics.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
It's weird, like the because even in when you think about counterculture, counterculture is also trying to gain attention. in to itself, and that's also what the platforms want. So it almost diminishes the likeliness of a counterculture, other
That's
than
correct. Or more insidiously, I think it incentivizes a cleaning up of the counterculture very fast. So if you because you can be poor and be pure, or you can be rich and compromise a little, right? So perhaps there was no incentive ever to be pure, but the the divide with that compromise is now very dramatic, very drastic. There's too much of an incentive to clean up your act, to not be grimy and dirty, and to want to court that attention. If you are an artist that can um, open for the inauguration of the next US president, okay, payoffs are huge. It's That's not going to be Black Sabbath. It's not going to be Eminem. It's not. I'm like going through heavy metal, rap. Um, it's not going to be any of that.
yeah,
You
I'm
know.
sure Taylor Swift will qualify.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
interestingly, I don't know if you know this. It's my favorite thing to bore people with. Um, I forgot his name. Do you know how many of the top 10 songs of the last 20 years have been written by one of two people? It's crazy. I forgot his name. I can tell you
Really?
later.
I think
Yeah,
I've heard of this before. Like
I
I've seen him
forgot his
before.
name.
He's
I,
wait.
he used to be the lead producer and singer for the Backstreet Boys, and then I don't think he has a beard.
Okay.
But no. I remember that I remember there used to be the lead, the songwriter for the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and Britney Spears and Taylor Swift. Is when you
Yeah.
said Taylor Swift, then I was and Katy
Yeah.
Perry.
Yeah.
So like it's crazy how similar that culture is, and
Right.
yeah. So anyway, my point
Yeah.
being that when it comes to the counterculture, I think there's very little incentive,
There is very little, and
which
I'm
is why I'm
curious.
saying I'm not going to go further into that, because specific to me, my business and my own survival from a marketing point of view, I'm thinking about how to really navigate that, which is a completely different conversation and too
So,
specific.
like, how do you think like social media like has influenced the way we perceive and like consume entertainment in the advent of, well, there's too many broadcasts and everybody's just trying to be abnormal. Like they're trying to be, let's say, counterculture, but it's just being drowned out. Like, how do you think um, the way we perceive and consume entertainment is changing because of
I think it starts off with that, what we were just talking about, which is that we are more likely to binge than prefer a TV series that releases one episode every week. We want the binge.
it?
And again, in that food analogy, it's not very dissimilar to a food addiction, to somebody who just loves the MSG hit of biryani, and then you kind of just keep having that biryani every day for 60 days. I know people like that. You just want to you want to chew until it becomes uncomfortable to do so, and that's, for me, that's entertainment today. It's and I've seen this myself too. Like, I finally gave up my Netflix subscription, and a lot of people don't understand why I did that, because it's so cheap. Why can't you just leave it there? So I can't just leave it there, because it's really freaking crazy how I get so tired I chew, because I'm like, okay, I don't want that. I don't want to chew. I want something nice for a change. But there's nothing nice. 40 minutes later, I'm watching a stupid documentary.
I feel that with YouTube, man. I feel that
So
with YouTube.
so that's what's changed. It's scary how it's like we never get out of the loop. So
Hmm.
that's why I deleted these things. Like I'm because I can't resist it. It's not the cost or anything else. It's not that it's. I mean, it's cheap.
Hmm.
You think about that logic at face value. Like, why would you delete something? Why would you cancel something that's so cheap? Why can't you just leave
Hmm.
it there and just use the best parts? You
Hmm.
know, why sacrifice the new season of Stranger Things?
Hmm.
So, uh,
Like I respect that a lot because you also a lot of people try to quit social media without really deleting the platforms, but you
oh
really
man,
took it
that
upon yourself because you
I
saw
tried
your lack of self-control.
I tried to do that for years, and I just realized it's not
W-
possible. It's too
w-
good. They're too good at what they do.
would you like that
So,
MSG, man?
yeah.
And do you think that that's how people could conduct themselves in this new world? Like, let's
No,
say
no,
as
no. I think that's a very
individuals.
bad idea. I hate it. Like I said, it's very bad. It's not a good thing. It's you
Hmm.
I heard. I don't know if you have any Jewish viewers, but I heard that this is a Jewish belief system. I don't know if it is, but I
Hmm.
agree with it because I've seen it to be true. Um, if you the main reason that
Hmm.
you need to pull yourself back in there is because it's dangerous to be a recluse. It's
Yeah.
you maybe I'm a peace loving recluse, but somebody's going to be a dead Krasinski. uh,
Hmm.
and that's really the other problem is that we're not really starting here. It's not the eco-fascism thing is kind of scary. I'm relating it to eco-fascism because I was thinking of like recluse behavior,
Hmm. Could
completely
you
disconnecting.
could you go more into that? I don't know what that means.
Well, I think okay, so not specifically eco-fascism, but I think there is a tendency with people who get to this point, including myself, I know, um, because I've been through that and I know it's not a good thing, to think of a completely parallel existence outside of the whole system, right? Um, and I don't think that's good because I think that you don't really have a clean slate. I think it would be good to live closer to the land if we all started living today and we had no baggage. If
Hmm.
you want a true reset, I wouldn't I wouldn't protest against that reset. But you're not going to get a true reset. What you're going to get is a lot of people with grudges,
Hmm.
and that is not going to work. So you need to again going back to the Jewish thing. You can you don't need to make money. You can live off the land, do something, and be happy. Um, but the reason that it's important to make money out there in the market is because you should be interacting with other humans. The social role of market interactions and kind of any kind of relationship with other human beings, commercial or otherwise, is to belong to society, to want to belong to society, not always like be outside and say, you live in a parallel universe or an alternate, sorry, not parallel universe, an alternate reality. Um, um, the A counterculture is specifically about changing the system. It's not only about talking
Hmm.
about the change
Right.
or dreaming about the change or creating a little cult in the middle of the forest. It's
Hmm.
about changing the system. It's about
Right.
effecting that change. So
Yeah.
it's not a good thing to just
Hmm.
like just go off, but with the internet, the secret is here again. Okay, well, stop me if I'm going too much into not this conversation, but my internal um, business thought thing
Hmm.
about just marketing in general. But it's going to be hard for me to avoid that overlap a little.
Just go for it. Just go for it. I will pull you back when necessary.
I'm not sure. if Mastodon, if that's the direction. I believe in the decentralized web. I think, for instance, one way to have power over the platform is to be on multiple platforms, to effectively extract your value from them without them extracting value from you, in the sense that, if you, for instance, if you're streaming on Twitch and YouTube, no single person has a power over you. One person can ban you, the other person will get more views,
That's
right?
that's interesting.
So
Yeah.
that's one subversive thing that exists already, which is being a multi-platform person, and learning how to use the platform without the platform using you, um, is, I think, going to become a default skill.
Right. Yeah.
It's not there yet, I think, but
Yeah.
it's going to become a default skill.
And
That's one thing. And the
so
second thing, sorry, go on.
um, I'm just trying to understand. Like, okay, what needs to change on a platform level? Let's say.
It's,
So.
I don't. So the thing is that I don't know if it's good to say that fundamentally, because I'm not really big on government intervention. So you go down this route and you're going to get more government intervention. Do you think that's better than the platforms being what they are now? I don't know. I don't want to know. So it's not about that. It's not about
Yeah.
what can you change, or let them be what they are. I don't care. But it's important for you to know what the risks are to you, and to call out the lies. Like the one lie is what I said with the anonymity, and oh, sorry, one lie is the idea that you have to you like you have to be yourself. You have to be your face. You have to be authentic. You have to put yourself out there. Otherwise, there is no trust. You are an untrustworthy person if you don't do that. If you don't expose yourself, you don't retain a sense of privacy, a line between like your private life and your public life, even to your family. That's wrong. That is not true. That needs to be questioned and broken down. Otherwise, it's very dangerous. That's one thing. The second lie is the lie they want you to believe about the power of these platforms. I think the only power they actually have, which is where I think we're kind of getting to a point where it's going to start blowing up, and you, it's they're going to lose their power. Is The only power they have is the urban legend that they have power at this point. I'll tell you why that's the case, even though it sounds
What do you mean then?
implausible. I'll tell you. Um, um, okay, let me give you an example. Think of chess right now, and wanting to become a chess player. It is absolutely true that the barrier to entry is very low of being a chess player. You can get good really fast being a chess player, but so can everybody else. So you are kind of entering a field. I'm using this analogy from something else that I read. I'm very bad at remembering the exact references, but I found this reference, like this analogy, to be really useful. Um, you're entering a field that is not going to reward you for being better. You got into it thinking, okay, I'm going to do this better, so I'm going to get some rewards, but actually, you're just in the hamster wheel now, and it takes a while for you to call that out for yourself. It's the same thing with social media, most of these platforms, which is you're not really gaining as much from them as you think. In terms of when I'm talking about whether you see it as a user, or as a marketer or anything else, you are fighting for space in a very, very crowded space. That is the incentive for a counterculture. Now, given how dramatic this divide has become, perhaps the incentive really has to hit like a tipping point before it happens. But that incentive is growing. You know it, and eventually you will have to admit it to yourself. There is. you're competing for very scarce resources. You can't fool yourself beyond a point. It's tougher and tougher and tougher, and beyond a point, you're just going to think to yourself, this is a waste of my time. It's a waste of my time, and it's a waste of my money. And so it will automatically, I think, explode or implode. Which is why I think that getting out of the system is not necessarily helping to bring that point closer. Right?
Right, because you're
It
completely disconnected from it.
precisely. And in a way, social media broke because of WhatsApp. Because there's one lie that was called out, which is the half of that public lie. You could just go to WhatsApp and say the same things, but only to a small set of people, like a closed group. You didn't have to be fully open. You can be open to a small set of people. If you get what I'm saying. Right? So much like that, I just don't know how it's going to look, but it is happening. You can feel this kind of this burden, and the only reason you're really doing it now is because you're in that hamster wheel, and you think that if you don't do it, then you'll fail even more. Like you're chasing that carrot. That's what's happening. But like, I mean, I don't mean to like dissuade you.
No, I'm finding this very interesting.
So sorry, I just realized I was being really negative. But what I'm saying
I see what you mean. Like, because I feel that too. Like full disclosure, because I'm also working through the moral question of social media as well. Because I know this is a medium I really love. Because having conversations with people such as yourself, I find that incredibly engaging. And I know when I engage with podcasts, I'm really engaged by them. I enjoy them a lot, and they teach me things that I otherwise wouldn't know. Like, so to me, as much as like, you're right in that, like it's getting harder and harder, and but the reasons I'm doing it for, like right now at least, are way more intrinsic, which is helping me navigate the space much more easily. Because for me, like, okay, like how could I have the best conversations, where I'm just extracting. Imagine you're a book and I'm just learning from you and I'm extracting knowledge from you. How could I improve that skill? And like I have so many different ways of not of enjoying it, the process, because I love conversation. Because like I learn something new and it makes me reflect, and it's like that chewing thing where for me, I find that chewing process where I'm talking to other people one of the best methods for growth, personally. And I know the podcasts I've listened to have also helped me do the same. So I do see a potential for good in these platforms, and if you do it for long enough, and I think there's different ways to hack it as well. So I'm not dissuaded, but I'm digesting what you've said, and I'm also like processing it,
I
because I
do
might
think
not like the food, but I don't mind it.
well, it's not the food per se. It's more that podcasts are very good, and chewing is reflection, but it's more the media to avoid, the content to avoid is more um, a reflection in a kind of a stasis. You know, it's the ice cream's not changing from 1 minute to the next. And beyond a particular point, you're not going to get any more reflection out of it. You're just stuck. You're just doing it, right? So it's also that's what I mean by that's the value of books. And if you're a chewer, that's one of the best things about books. Something that you have to drag across days will you will go to sleep with. You'll think about it. You'll engage like your subconscious in it. You can't help it. You can get through all of the Harry Potter movies between lunch and dinner, but you can't get through all of those books. So if you, for instance, with a podcast, you don't necessarily have to lengthen it. Everything is good for some things and not for other things. Um, have you thought about what is really a podcast good for? So that's one thing. The second thing is, why aren't you anonymous? Have you thought about whether you will have better conversations if
Mm-hmm.
you are anonymous and your guest is anonymous? Will you ask different questions and will they give different answers? If
Mm-hmm.
if you are treating it as an identity exercise and they're treating it as an identity exercise, how much are you going to stray from what you already know and they already know? Um, that's the thing. And again, this is not to fault you or that person. It is just who we have become now, primarily because, and that's one of the reasons that I was saying I don't want to be known on the internet. What I
Mm-hmm.
mean by that is more that I don't want the high stakes of the internet. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think that's what I want the internet to be to me, which is, um, I want it to be a free medium
Mm-hmm.
where I can change my mind tomorrow, right?
Right.
Because I don't get that freedom,
That's
really,
true. That's true.
elsewhere, and you
Like,
need that to find your way, especially in a world that's changing so fast. You have to your philosophies of life have to adapt and change.
mm-hmm.
You have to be able to find those compromises, and I'll give you an example. Um, if I had this conversation, the one I'm going to describe to you, with anybody that I know, it will be a political conversation about the BJP versus the left and everything, Congress, other parties. Um, Now, I'm deeply opposed to um, digital payments, and I was also very opposed to Aadhaar. I was probably one of the last people to get an Aadhaar card.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in fact, I think I finally got it for some reason to do with the passport. I was
Mm-hmm.
biting my tongue through that process.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so these two things I was very opposed to. Okay, um, and I, I I had this conversation with an absolute stranger where I understood why, ideologically, for me, these are bad things,
Mm-hmm.
um, but they are the need of the hour now,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I find I thinking about all the people that I know, okay, and their faces and the real people. I don't think I'd be able to have that conversation with those people, knowing them knowing me knowing them, knowing each other's stances. I don't think I'd be able to have that conversation with with real people in that sense, right? So this kind
Mm-hmm.
of, and that's kind of in a weird way shaped my identity. Even with cash, like, I love cash. I don't think, I'm very distrusting of a future society where all payments are digital. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think it is too many leaps of imagination between your digital payment apps kind of deciding what you can and can't spend on,
Mm-hmm.
restricting your freedom.
Mm-hmm.
That's not possible to do with cash. Again, this is the same thing about platforms. You should never allow the platform to have power over you. That's the
Mm-hmm.
fundamental rule.
Mm-hmm.
So if cash disappears tomorrow and I can only make payments through digital UPI XYZ, then I'm giving power to somebody to say I can't transfer money, or that I can't transfer money to you, or I can't buy um, more than 5,000 rupees worth of alcohol in a month.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe
Right.
that won't apply to me, but what do you think of a future society where, and there'd probably be popular consensus support for this. What do you think of a society where transfers to people who are poor and marginalized, direct transfers, which people are raving about now, now have strings attached? You
Mm-hmm.
can spend this only out of this account from this app, but you can't buy this with it, you can't buy this with it, you can't buy this with it.
Mm-hmm.
You will probably find consensus support for this being a good thing,
Mm-hmm.
but for me, that's two steps away from me, from that being my life. uh, right?
Mm-hmm.
So completely different conversation, but
Do you? Mhm.
this is a part of my digital identity, the way I think about my digital identity. Why I don't have a smartphone. Why I appreciate that you can, by the way, I don't know if you know this, do UPI transactions from your phone over SMS and call. Uh, okay.
Mm.
And yeah, all of these things. It was from my, what would you call it, like a pure libertarian approach,
Mhm.
the melting of my stance,
Mhm.
and nobody that I know, um, nobody's no real person that I know who's not a stranger to me could have done that to me. That would have been an
Mhm.
argument. It would have been
Right.
an argument all through the day. Right.
Yeah.
So
It's also interesting that
uh,
the nature of arguments is also quite like, shifting quite a bit. Where I'm looking at journalism and um, just information consumption in general, and I'm just not sure what to make of it anymore. Like, and I'm curious if that worries you at all. Like, do you think that one, like, what do you think the landscape of journalism has become because of social media? And and two, we can get to that later. But
so what do you mean by journalism? We may be consuming very different things.
like journalism through social media, like
Oh, that's right,
Johnny
because
Hack.
I'm not on social media, so
Yeah, so that wouldn't apply.
um, if you're talking
Hmm.
about generally journalism, what's happened to journalism, I don't think that it's any different from what we were talking about in terms of books and the need to chew and the clickbait,
Yeah.
and
So,
um, you're not going to get attention. Nobody's going to read an article that builds up
mhm,
with context.
right.
It's very hard. Long form is hard.
Hmm. And
And sorry, go on.
but I see what you mean. And but like I understand like your views now on like the negative aspects of social media, but do you think social media can be a force for good as well?
Yes, of course. I think the primary function of social media is um, to create. I'm not against gatekeepers. I'm not against editorial control. I'm not against having middlemen.
Mm-hmm.
The middlemen are important.
Mm-hmm.
If in general the quality of content, so society in general improves when supposing, for instance, I'm writing an article, and it's going to be published without anybody having any editorial control over it. I
Mm-hmm.
will write one side of things.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm writing an article and I know that it's going to have to pass somebody's approval, okay,
Mm-hmm.
then I will be more civilized. I might think about it a little differently. There's an incentive for me to improve my craft, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but again, once you bring that editorial layer in, there's a question of censorship, there's a question of countercultures, mainstreaming, all of these things. The role
Mm-hmm.
of social media, which is forgotten and kind of become the establishment, that it's, I mean, it's not just become part of the establishment, it's become the establishment, and it's kind of made the establishment stronger. The role of social media is actually to create a vast market of gatekeepers, which you can pick and choose from. Where, if you go back to the thing about journalism, it's very sad that newspapers are dying, because what that kind of shows me is the opposite is happening. The market of gatekeepers is reducing, and it
Mm-hmm.
seems like, which is where I disagree with most anti-social media people, it seems like what most people want is to centralize gatekeeping and make it accountable to the government, or accountable in some way where they can't
Somewhere.
really get into the nuance of
Moderation.
it. But I know that it's going to be good, you figure out how to do it, but it's a hard
Mm.
problem. You
Do
can't.
you do
It's
you,
not solvable in that way.
that's a very fascinating point. Are you for or against the moderation?
I think without moderation, a community dies very fast. But you need the moderators. But also you need a vast market of gatekeepers and moderators. So it is not only about. So the problem that Reddit is having, for instance, right now, if you want to look into that controversy,
Where
is
the
that
moderators went on strike.
yeah. Now I'll tell you controversially where the CEO, for different reasons than his reasons, for me, has perhaps set kind of hit on a part of the problem, which I think a lot of Reddit users are not willing to accept. The moderators have become a mafia, and that has happened because these old communities that have been there for 12 years, 15 years, and are now official communities in that sense. Okay. Again, you see the lack of a counterculture is what allows things to be establishment, right? So these old communities are now the community. Like there's you
Yeah,
think
the
of in something
sub-communities
like
don't
a
never service up nowadays.
like you don't have you don't have folks, you don't have alternatives, you
Yeah.
don't have like okay, I'm going to start a new community to discuss this. Incidentally, in the early days of the internet, that was quite a thing that was quite popular. In fact, the whole idea of forking on GitHub is born out of those kind of early internet experiences, where at some point a community just became too big and it was hard to for everybody to get along, and so a contingent of users, whether majority or minority, not usually majority but mostly minority, felt that their values were different, they wanted to do something different, and the community would fork, and then you'd have two people with similar goals and similar values, okay, but you differing on some things, and so that's kind of missing now. The
Even
moderators
within
are mafia,
that's
so
very interesting. So I guess it's also so natural as like, as cultures, let's say from tribes, they grow into the cities and countries. It's interesting that that phenomena of human development has happened within Reddit almost.
in that sense a lot of the internet um, mimics geographical growth in that way, in both good ways and bad ways. It's very hard to topple an establishment once it's created, and it's just again specifically with Reddit, it goes back to the question of incentive. Reddit has a lot to gain from deeply entrenched communities,
Yeah.
but in reality, um, that does not seem to happen. It's very hard to keep growing and growing and growing your community in the real world. You inevitably break off, you inevitably have differences, and that's what keeps things fresh, and that's what just keeps it from becoming like this solidified tree which you can't fight against.
Yeah.
So I
It's
forgot
like, yeah,
what were we actually talking about? Where did we get? How did we get here?
the positives of social media, and then we're
Okay,
going
sorry.
into.
Let's get back to that, because this is the positive for me. The positive is it's possible, and not just possible. The best outcome of again, I would not say social media. I'd say the consumer internet, the internet in general, right? Is how configurable it is, and how that configuration inevitably benefits decentralization. It does not actually allow centralization to persist, but it has, for various historical reasons, been phase one. So I would think of it more as phase one. And phase one has been a disaster, more than I was willing to see. I mean, there's a lot of good, for sure, but it's I never thought it would become a mental health problem.
Yeah.
You know. So anyway, that's a different point. This is for me the best thing about social media, that it is a place where the internet, social media, where what you're doing is allowing a vast market of gatekeepers. So neither extreme is good. Single gatekeeper, no gatekeepers, neither extreme is good. So
So decentralization is the way.
I don't know. Like that word is very. It's very.
Yeah, but
You know what's? Let me give you, for instance, a very interesting example of a flipping of sorts. Of this whole thing. Like, you want to put it in one way. Okay, you can think of it this way. You can think of the brand space on mainstream social media, kind of invading the user space. For me, when I grew up, the internet was all user space. Very few brands there, very few companies there, very little commerce. The brand space then took over, and I think users now see themselves as brands, and there's not too much user space left. But there is user space on things like WhatsApp and everything else. But yeah, it's mostly the brand space talking. A very curious example is Hacker News. Hacker News is one of the news sources that I still go back to, even though it's not as good as it was before. And a lot of the comments are really irritating now. It is recommendation based. It has a lot of the negatives, but what's funny about it is that not um, it's not it's not a brand that is trying to capture users. On the other hand, it is the opposite. It is a user space nurtured by a brand, by Y Combinator, in that sense, which makes it interesting and makes it stand out from almost anything else that's out there. I think fundamentally this the way that maybe that's one of the things that's basically wrong. Again, I don't know if I'd call it decentralization, but what Facebook and any other platform that is trying to build a community is doing is they're really building the real estate for a food court, you know. So they're trying to say, set up your food court here, and that doesn't seem to be working very well, because in the end, the food court always knows that everybody is their customer, right? And of course, the other deeply disastrous part of that is that I suppose um, it was always possible. You know what? Never mind. Let's stick to positives. We'll come back to that. But uh, yeah, I think that there are hints and kind of starts, but nothing really concrete. And I don't know if I'd really call it decentralization. There are a lot of advantages, and from a very technical point of view, I'm telling you, it may not be possible to have that kind of decentralization. It's pretty hard for decentralization to work the way people are imagining it,
okay.
blockchain type
So
decentralization.
what would like a decentralized social media look like here?
I don't know, but like I said, there's a little hint here. The hint is Hacker News, I feel. It's very interesting as that a brand has nurtured a community where you can trash the brand also, and happens quite often. And more importantly, uh, it's it's persisted. I don't want to. make it sound like, I don't know which. I really don't know why, but I'm pretty sure one factor is that. Um,
Why is this interesting to you? I'm still not grasping that.
okay, I'll tell you. Um, it makes Y Combinator like a cafe, and I think decentralization looks a lot more like that, which is um, it maybe does not look as much like public parks
Mm-hmm.
as it does like cafes. So, um,
Hello.
and that may be an uncomfortable truth
Um,
for a lot of people
1 second.
because,
You
sorry.
you cut out for me a
Oh,
bit.
right.
It's
That may be
so so you said
that,
decentralization might look like a
yep,
cafe.
yep. So that may be an uncomfortable truth for a lot of people because it might mean that you can't have decentralization for free. Um,
Hmm.
Y Combinator is free, but there is a different cost in Y Combinator, which is that it is a technical community. It is a community where you can't, I mean, you just log in and immediately obvious to 95% of the world that it doesn't apply to them.
Hmm.
So there is a barrier to entry there. When you don't have that kind of barrier to entry, you might have to erect cost as a barrier to entry. Not
Hmm.
for everybody. If we're meeting for a coffee, I don't have to order a coffee to have a conversation with you in in a cafe, but you have to. Maybe you don't do it today, maybe you don't do it tomorrow, but you eventually have to.
Hmm.
So I think it's gonna. I think it may be an uncomfortable realization for a lot of people that you're not going to have a free internet, um, and a positive internet. And I think in that sense, I think when that starts to grow, when more things are paid, that's when you'll see the ad bubble popping.
Where do you think all of this is headed then? Like, so I'm curious. Like, let's say you were to see the future, like in you from your eyes. Like, I'm curious to see the future from your eyes of social media and these platforms. Like, where do you think all of this is headed? And like, just to paint a clear picture.
Okay. Um, More closed spaces.
Okay.
And again, it's very hard for internet idealists to say that. And I think I'm an internet idealist. So a lot of people maybe don't want to say that, don't want to admit it, want to pretend that it can work without it. But I'm reacting to what I'm seeing today, and I'm trying not to be Ted Krasinski. So I'm reacting to what I see today, which is that you don't realize it, but actually, a lot of your internet use is outside of these platforms, and it is on another platform, but it's not traceable to you. It's not advertisement based. Nobody that it's not what would you say, it's not part of somebody's part of Google or Facebook's database, not somebody's database. You are kind of moving away from that. Examples of that is, well, WhatsApp before Facebook bought them, which is why it was so important for them to buy it, I suppose. But Telegram, even now, which is why I love Telegram. But even less ideal things like Slack, and group chat for work in general.
That could be.
You're talking, you're using a closed space more often than you realize, is my point. And so that's already starting. It it's really important. Going back to the fundamental lie of social media, it is really important for the platforms that exist, the more negative than positive platforms, to extract every part of your identity, everything you do. Okay, they want to know who you are, to all your friends, to your family. They want to know your thoughts and who you are at work. They want to know everything about you. It's very important for them to do that. But you're already kind of opting out. You are already using more closed platforms than you realize. And that's only going to grow. Um, how far away is and there are a lot of these kind of apps, but how would you say it? Actually, no, it's like it's already there. Discord, for instance. Discord has really bad EULA, but otherwise, Discord is a closed community. Your chat and your identity is anonymous, and your chat or pseudonymous, and your chat is not available for Google or anybody else to scrub. And in that sense, Discord is cooler than Reddit. And this maybe is the start of that kind of counterculture, where you can kind of see what I'm saying already happening. And perhaps it's important that it's not self-aware when it happens. Like I'm talking about it from a point of self-awareness, and so that's setting off a different conversation. But for the average user, they're not necessarily doing it for this because of this level of analysis. I would like to know if there are family Slack channels or family Discord channels. That'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to see. And again, probably the only barrier to entry to a family Discord channel is the fact that the older people don't have Discord on their phone. But is that going to be true in 10 years when the people who are 15 to 20 now have kids, or above have kids? Is that going to be true? Are my kids going to be on WhatsApp? Hell no. I would not. My family group would not be on WhatsApp. I'm probably in the generation that is between these two mediums. You
And
know,
how can like parents and educators navigate social media, do you think, for kids?
don't ask me, man. I'm neither.
I know, but like, like I'm curious.
But I mean, my parents, my early internet advice is good advice. I I saw the problem with I'm going to sound old, MySpace and Facebook. Because starting with MySpace did not require that you put your real name, and then Facebook made it a really cool thing that it's actually you. It's not some pretend person. And so while MySpace was still alive, you started seeing a lot of people with their real names on MySpace, while Facebook was still small. And that period when MySpace had real names, and had a very high user base in my social circle, I think was a very dangerous period, and where I saw firsthand the issue is when it comes to kids and stuff. The issue is that you're not actually protected by your identity being known. It only makes it easier. Like you think that you think that it's a good thing that you know who is bullying your kid, but I think what you're not seeing, which was quite obvious at the time if you grew up in that period, the bullying is happening in the first place because the bully can find your kid. Okay, you can't bully somebody who's anonymous, whose account is not their life's work, who can just delete that account and start again. You can't bully them, right? So I suppose it's only fitting that it was a bullying platform, social media, initially, and it continued to grow and be that. Like I said, it goes back to the fact that I think forget kids, even adults, but especially kids. There is an art to civilization where you have to learn how to um, engage in impersonal conversation. This is, for instance, why lawyers wear wigs and stuff like that. There's a sense in which this is a very real thing, by the way. When you put on that wig, you're no longer who you were. You are a judge. Your personality sits outside,
Right.
right? So the to be that actor, I think, again, very maligned. To act and be somebody else is not cool. Is supposed to be the sign of an untrustworthy person, but it's quite the opposite of that. It's very important to act. It's very important to put on costumes and try out roles, and that's the only way that you can really actually protect your true self and also grow your true self based on how all these experiments pan out.
Right.
And kids who don't get that, I think, are in a very disadvantageous situation. I'm not surprised there's even more online bullying now than before. I think the world becomes very high stakes very fast for kids today. And everything from the time that you're a pre-teenager is on record. That's scary to me. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't want anybody to know what I thought when I was 13 years old.
Yeah, it's a
So,
consistent problem that comes up, like where big creators, where like, there'll be some obscure point that they made like 10, 20 years ago that you have to apologize for now because
yeah,
somebody, and like
yep.
that, and that's the whole cancel culture, right? And that's such a, that's an odd one, the cancel culture. Like I don't know how to like make of it, oh, how it came about actually.
Um, I think it's obsession with people and identities. There's nothing wrong with calling out somebody who's committed a crime, and there are crimes, and you commit crimes, or you're a general douche. Like, for instance, what I appreciate in podcasts is the fact that, supposing you ask me an uncomfortable question and I wiggled out, you can still post that video of me wiggling out of an uncomfortable question. So it's very hard for me to be my rehearsed self on a podcast in that sense, unless you are a really boring host, right? So in that sense, um, I suppose. Let me think about it for a minute. Um, ah, yeah, I think that a part of it for sure is that we are very obsessed now with identity wars, and and it's not just about my war versus my enemy. In a sense, everybody is my enemy. Who agrees with all of me, right? And so the more public you are, the more you're going to take a stand about something. Most of the time, I think the person, it's very easy for me to ignore my true diametric opposite canceling me. It's very hard to ignore. Um, it's very hard to ignore when you're canceled by somebody who's half your friend. And I don't think it is. I think it's cancel culture more because um, of the intensity of that,
Hmm.
of how polarized the debate has to become, of how the nuance goes away, and how complex identities are not acceptable, changing identities are not acceptable,
Hmm.
misunderstandings are not acceptable,
Hmm.
you know.
Hmm.
Um, but in the end, it's our fault if we insist on putting ourselves on record.
Hmm.
It's you do it because you think you're going to gain something from it, monetarily or socially.
Hmm.
But why complain when it bites you back?
Hmm.
You know.
Hmm. Well,
So
that's a very interesting point. I've never thought about being anonymous this way, but I
I
never
know.
thought of the benefits.
But
And
that's what I mean. That's what scares me is how good these guys are. Again, I come back to that. Like, man, these guys are so good. They're so good at changing like basic truths, whether it's about anonymity or about this rabid belief that they bullshit the bullshitters. That's what's amazing to me. Marketing people have like when I talk to marketing people now versus even 10 years back.
Mhm.
Um, it's amazing how many people believe this shit works.
Mhm.
And I can show you it doesn't work. But it's amazing how much people believe it works. And it'll stay in the hamster wheel.
Right.
It's amazing to me that what's the other lie? The other lie is not really the other lie. Like you know how much it changes us is when in business discussions I'm talking about sales, for instance, when we talk about sales strategies and marketing strategies, kind of the default assumption, okay,
Mhm.
is for some kind of fast money strategy.
Mhm.
But when did sales just become that?
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, what about usually when you want to release a product and you kind of talk about a sales strategy, I know that it's going to be slow at first and it's going to pick up later and it's going to be slow. It's fine, right?
Mhm.
It's going to take you 6 months. If just putting numbers out there, it's going
Mhm.
to take you 6 months. Let's talk about a 6 month strategy.
Mhm.
Okay. That used to be kind of the default.
Mhm.
That used to be, I mean, because that's just how things work. It's
Mhm.
not that it doesn't work like that anymore. It still works like that.
Mhm.
I mean, you can force it to not work like that. You can pay through your nose to deep discount and make it look like it doesn't work like that, but it still works like that. There is inertia,
Mhm.
the same inertia that helps you once you do win.
Mhm.
It took a long time for Oreos to become Oreos, but now they can just fire everybody in that department,
Mhm.
and people will still be eating Oreos. And
Mhm.
that's so that inertia that today helps Oreos sell themselves
Mhm.
is the inertia you face when you're trying to compete with Oreos. That's
Mhm.
normal. That's natural. You don't want to live in a world where today you're a success and tomorrow you're a failure. But
Mhm.
um, but it seems to me that people believe that you do actually live in that world of overnight success, and
Mhm.
it's so hard for me to be um, um, even calm sometimes
Mhm.
in that kind of situation, in that kind of meeting, because I feel like that propaganda is so set in now,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
It's very meta because they're part of the same scheme. Like they are,
Mhm.
for me, capitalism is not um, a quick money system.
Mm-hmm.
For me, capitalism is an automatic money system.
Mm.
The crudest version of that being rental income, for instance.
Mm.
It's automatic. It just comes. You shut up at some point, and it just comes.
Mm-hmm.
Not really, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's not a quick money system,
Yeah.
and that's the other way in which I think platform economics have not just influenced but managed to convince you and one of our common friends theory that everybody thought he was a conspiracy theorist but I think he's actually on the money. The I think a lot of the same stakeholders of these platforms
Mm-hmm.
are the ones doing the shilling for the platforms
Mm.
in 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 the press, in the companies they invest in.
Mm.
There's a kind of minimum support being given to these platforms um, through this peddling of this lie that this is how the world works, that this is how sales works, and this is how marketing works.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very sad that it's kind of become the default in
Mm.
business. And it's very sad that people think that I'm not that I'm anti-capitalist. People think I'm kind of more on
Mm.
the left on this one.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny that people have forgotten that that's not what capitalism is. It's not. Capitalism is not snake oil sales.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. It's not the scam world.
Mm.
And yeah, that's the thing.